Don't mind the hair color. We're in the middle of crazy over here. When I was but a wee lass, about 8 or 9, I graduated from the Babysitters Club to Robert Ludlum, Dean Koontz, and Stephen King, which is what I could scavenge out of my father's library. He was one of those people who believed that all reading was good, so he never forbid me a book. But what he did do was warn me about one of them. Pet Sematary, he said, he could never finish because it was too scary. So, of course, that was the next thing I read, as you do. And I thought it was okay. It was fine. It had some nice creepy bits. It had a vicious cat that we all adore. It was a little slow, honestly, but, it was fine. It was fine. Which, of course, meant that my father was a little weenie man who could never be trusted about horror. The truth is, horror is subjective, and some horror needs context. Context that I didn't have as a 10-year-old whose most profound loss was a hamster. I didn't understand what the horror even was. I didn't understand that Pet Sematary is not a creature feature, it's psychological horror. Nobody told me this, which is why I'm here to tell you that Pet Sematary is not a creature feature. It is psychological and emotional horror. And if your most profound loss is the pet cat, you may not be ready for Pet Sematary. I wanted to make a video about horror is subjective, that it's not one size fits all. And most of you have probably heard this before, the idea that horror is a feeling, not a genre, which I am far too autistic to actually agree with, but I understand the sentiment, okay? It's fine. It's fine. I'm not going to get pedantic today. Horror is subjective, and some of that horror requires context. So how do you know what is really scary? I can't tell you what you're going to find scary. You want to know what I find scary? How about the fact that the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light? There you go. That is the scariest true fact I know. And some of you, there's at least one of you is going to think about that for a little bit and then ask, why the hell did I tell you that? You didn't really want to know that. What the hell? And the rest of you are going to think about it for a little bit and wonder what I'm smoking and where you can get some. Because that's not going to scare you at all. You don't even understand why I'd be scared. Why is that weird? Why is that scary? You're living in the hopping age of billions of galaxies crowding the sky. Why are you scared of sometime far in the future when you are long dead, when the sun is long dead, when the human race is probably long dead, that the stars will start disappearing? How is that scary? I don't know. I don't know why it's scary. I can't tell you why it's scary because horror is subjective. And I wanted to make a video about how horror is subjective and how you can actually try and find horror that you're looking for. I wanted to make some horror recommendations of books, not all of which are actually horror, spoiler alert, and why they're scary. Because that's what you want to know when you're trying to find something that scares you. You don't want to know what I find scary. You don't want to know what my father found scary. You don't want to know what 140 people on the internet thought was scary. You want to know what you're going to find scary. And how do you know what that is? How do you tell? So I'm actually going to give you, I think I have like 5, we'll consider Pet Sematary 1, okay? Bonus Pet Sematary. I'll tell you what's scary about Pet Sematary, and we'll consider that a bonus one. So I've got a few books and what the actual horror is about so that you can make a decision on whether or not you're going to find that scary. since I brought up Pet Sematary, we'll start with Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary is not a creature feature. You could be forgiven for thinking that Pet Sematary is a creature feature. The blurb says on the back that there's a field that brings things back to life. There's undead crawling around, right? Creature feature. No. No, 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 no. Oh, dear darling, no. No. Pet Sematary is psychological and emotional horror. There are no surprises. There are very few jump scares. There is a little bit. I mean, there are creatures. There are undead. You do get undead in Pet Sematary. But there's only really a few scenes. It's not a whole book's worth of undead running around. That's not what this book is about. This book is about grief. It is about loss. And it is about exactly how far would you go to have just a little bit more time. So how profound has the loss and grief been in your life? How profound can you imagine it being? Might help if you have ever been responsible for another human being's life. Might help, but I don't know that it would either. I have not reread Pet Sematary since I was a child. I'm not sure that I could finish it anymore. It might be too scary. Okay, I've got a few books for you, so let's just dig right in. They're from a bunch of different genres, sub-genres of horror. I wanted to start with Gothic. I wanted to start with Silent Companions, because it is probably the easiest fear to explain. This is the fear of being watched. This is the fear of being observed by something, another presence, that does not like you. This other person, this other thing that is watching your every movement, that is judging your every decision, is malevolent. When you try to explain horror to somebody, it usually just sounds funny. I'm sorry, you're afraid of a TARDIS? What? I'm sorry, you're afraid of topiary? What? No. Horror, that's not how horror works. Horror has to be read, to be understood, to be fully integrated into your horror life. So I'm not necessarily going to tell you what's watching the protagonist in the Silent Companions. They're silent companions. They don't talk. They don't talk. They're not even really there. They're not even really people. Are they people? I'm not sure. But they're watching. They're always watching. And they're judging. And she has been found wanting. This is very Gothic. It's by Laura Purcell. She can occasionally be hard to find in the US. When I tried to read this book some years ago, I couldn't actually find a copy in the US. My library didn't have it. I couldn't find it at any of my local independent bookstores. They didn't even have it available for printing. I had to go outside of the US and have one imported. Since this book has come out, she has actually gotten a lot more. I actually have a copy back here of one of her newer books. So since this, she has gotten a lot more recognition in the US. It should be easier to find this book. Next, we are going for actual creature features. You want actual creature features? I got your actual creature features for you. I just clapped at the microphone. That's probably not great. We'll try not to do that again. So yeah, actual creatures. I've actually got two for you in this category because one of them comes with huge content warnings. Oh boy. It's called Near the Bone. It is by Christina Henry. And there are two parts of this story. One is the creature is an actual creature feature that you expect. The other is all of the content warnings. Normally, I wouldn't warn you too hard about bad things happening to the main character because it's horror. We kind of expect bad things to happen to the main character. But this is big. This is all of the bad things that could happen to a woman in a relationship. All of them. Literally all of them, up to and including religious abuse. It is unrelenting and very, very difficult to read. So I did feel like I had to give you big, bright red warning sign. If you are sensitive, then about half this book is not going to be fun. It wasn't fun for me, and I am not sensitive. I am not sensitive to that at all. And I had to put it down and walk away several times. There were several times I thought, I'm not going to finish this book. I'm not going to finish this book. It is just unrelenting. And I understand why it is. I get it. I understand that we are living life through the eyes of the protagonist. And in the protagonist's eyes, this is unending. This is interminable. This is her entire world. But it is so difficult to get through. It is so difficult to read. So, yeah, half this book, huge content warnings. The other half is the creature feature, and I thought the creature was so well done in this book. The creature, you never really get a good look at it, which is perfect for a creature feature. Yeah, you never get a really good look at it, but it is there. It is scary. It can be silent when it needs to be. It is intelligent. It's hiding out there in the snow and the woods and the mountains. And it possibly wants to kill everyone there. Possibly. We'll see. Like I said, I am going to give you 2 here because I feel like Near the Bone has such a huge content warning attached to it. I'm going to give you one that's actually from the 1980s. I think it was 1988 that this book was put out. And it is a little of its time, but there's no domestic violence. So it's actually less icky than Near the Bone. It is Dean Koontz's Watchers. You might have heard of this book before. I know they've tried to make movie adaptations of it at least twice and failed horribly. I think the second one actually had Corey Haim as a teenager in a red convertible. I think that might have been a joke. I'm not entirely sure why they tried to do this. But this book is technically about a man in like his late 30s or 40s. And a lady is also there. And he finds a dog in the forest who is incredibly intelligent. Unfortunately, this dog seems to have a brother that you don't really see very clearly for a large portion of the book. And that is in fact the creature. They're both technically creatures, but one of them is a golden retriever. Nobody's scared of a golden retriever. Well, I don't know. Okay. Somebody somewhere is scared of an intelligent golden retriever. Most of us are like, cool, right? No. Golden retriever has a brother. Brother, not as good looking. And not nearly as nice. Dean Koontz, Watchers, is my second one there for the actual creature feature that you're looking for when you picked up Pet Sematary. Let's do some folk horror. Let's talk about I am stuck in an isolated area with some very suspicious people. Everyone I meet is lying to me, or is not being entirely truthful, or knows something that I don't know and they are not telling me. I'm not entirely sure that any of these people have my best interests at heart. This is folk horror. This is called The Burial Tide. It is by Neil Sharpson, who I discovered just this year thanks to think Sinead. I believe I will leave a link to her channel, Sinead's Spooky Corner, I think it's called. But she introduced me to Neil Sharpson. I, of course, read 2 of his books immediately. The first one I read was The Burial Tide. This is based in folklore, in Irish folklore, which I also love. I didn't realize that I was an Irish file, but here I am. I'm gooning for the Irish now. Wow, don't say that on YouTube. Don't say that on YouTube. That was a bad idea. Don't cut that one. We'll cut that. It's fine. The Burial Tide, Neil Sharpson. Girl wakes up in a coffin. She's been buried. Kind of freaks her out, as it would. And there are monsters wandering around this island. They're literal monsters. Like, they're not the people. Well, that's also questionable. Oh, it's hard because she doesn't know. She doesn't remember anything. And these people are acting a little off. We're not sure we buy everything they're telling her. She's not sure she buys it either. It's called The Burial Tide by Neil Sharpson. I consider it folk horror because it is an isolated island, and it is about a group of people that you don't necessarily trust. They are not here for your good interests. So, if that's your jam, if that's your horror, if that's what scares you, if waking up tomorrow and figuring out that everyone you thought was your community is lying to you, if that scares you, try The Burial Tide by Neil Sharpson. How about some horror that was never marketed as horror? I'm going to talk about The Gone World by Tom Switterlich. This was actually marketed as a sci-fi thriller. Because it is. It is. It absolutely is a thriller. It has all of, well, not all of, but it has good thriller tropes in it, especially towards the end. It gets very, very thriller. Nobody tells you that this is a horror book. Like, if you're reading the back of this, if you're reading the marketing material, it does not sound like a horror book. I am here to tell you this is a horror book. What's scary? I'm going to call this existential horror, which I think of as a subgenre of cosmic horror. That's what I'm going with. I don't know if anybody else has used this word. Absolutely, somebody else has used this word, but I don't think that's like an actual, I don't think you can look that up in like Barnes and Noble and get a listing of every existential horror book out there. It's not really that well known. Might just be me, probably 1 or 2 others, but I'm calling it existential horror. What is existential horror? Existential horror is when you question reality and existence. And I don't mean in a psychological way. Normally, when you're questioning reality and existence, is this real or is the main character losing their mind, right? It's like, that's psychological horror. This is not psychological horror. You absolutely believe that all of this is happening. You're just not sure that reality is what you thought reality was. You're not sure that the world that we're in is not a simulation, that it's not just going to go away when the dreamer awakens. And you're not entirely sure that you belong in it. Is this world real? And am I supposed to be here? That's what I'm going with. Existential horror, which is close cousins to existential angst, existential ennui, the normal 10,000-yard stare of your average cat. That's what we're going with. The Gone World is technically about a woman who is trying to save the universe from something that is going to end it. Like, they have words for it, but they don't actually know what it is. They just know it's coming. And this woman needs to help find some sort of solution. And she does that by, well, jumping between realities. It does have a little bit of body horror towards the beginning. There is a little bit of body horror also in this, but it is a good sci-fi thriller, and I think actually fairly scary in an existential way. So if those kind of questions bother you, if you lie awake at night wondering, is this world real? And do I belong here? You're probably going to get a kick out of this book, Gone World by Tom Switterlich. Let's go for a little bit of Eldritch horror, which is another subgenre of cosmic horror. I don't know if you can tell, but I have a thing for cosmic horror. This one is called The Hollow Places. This is by T. Kingfisher. She's big. She's big on the YouTube. You've probably seen a few of her books. I haven't seen The Hollow Places in many of the playlists. It might be because it is a couple of years old. But a lot of people go for her newer. You've probably seen a lot of her newer ones. I've also seen the Haunted House one, this, that, and the other. I don't really see The Hollow Places in a lot of lists. So I wanted to shine some light on it because this is Eldritch horror, which is very Lovecraftian. It's H.P. Lovecraft named the genre. I wouldn't recommend you actually read H.P. Lovecraft. Honestly, I think there are better works by better authors, and I think this is one of them. This is about a woman who finds... Don't ever try to describe horror to somebody. You're just going to sound silly, okay? So let's just say that this woman finds a door to some other realities. And then she discovers that there are entities already there who are not nice people. I hate it when they're not nice people. But they're big. They're incomprehensible. You can't communicate with them. You can't understand them. Have you ever been afraid that you are the ant? In Jakar's little Babylon 5 monologue about ants. The universe is big and scary, and there could be creatures out there that are so massive and so incomprehensible, and we can't define their motives. We can just try and stay out from underfoot. Is that your horror? Is that your jam? If that's your horror, if that's your jam, check out The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. It also has a little bit of body horror. There is definitely a little bit of gore going on. T. Kingfisher also has a sense of humor. Not a lot of people talk about this, especially in the horror genre, like Stephen King. Honestly, kind of a funny guy, but you never hear anyone say it. So I'm here to say T. Kingfisher has a sense of humor. It does come through in every book of hers I've ever read. If that bothers you, if you find humor existing alongside horror to be troublesome, you might not like the way T. Kingfisher writes. I'm fine with it. Like I said, I think Stephen King is a funny guy. And I think I'm the only one who actually gets his humor because nobody else talks about it. You will get T. Kingfisher being funny. It's not a questionable humor. It's not like Stephen King where I'm like, that dude's a funny guy, and you're like, what? No. T. Kingfisher, actual humor, and you will notice You will notice it. It is there. If you find that troublesome, you might not be a big fan of T. Kingfisher. It's in basically every book of hers I've ever read. She's got a very particular sense of humor. I like her sense of humor, so I'm fine with it. I'm also fine with humor coexisting alongside horror. I find tonal whiplash like that to be effective for me. Your mileage may vary. The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, good Eldritch horror. You want to do a lightning round? Let's do a lightning round. The Tommyknockers, nuclear power. Alice in Wonderland, identity horror. Winnie the Pooh, definite creature feature. Definite creature. Have you heard of the Heffalumps? The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. Plants. Okay, those are the horror recommendations I have for you and what I thought was actually scary about them. Personally, I only found 1 to 2 of these books actually made me afraid at any point. I won't bother telling you which ones they are because it doesn't matter. What I find scary is not what you're going to find scary. I hope that I have effectively explained what is scary about these books so you can say, hey, am I afraid of that? Maybe I should check this book out. That's all I'm going for here. And I'm serious about that Alice in Wonderland one. That is identity horror. I will fight you on that one. And I'll win. I'll probably be making it up the whole time, but I'll still win. I will be back in a couple of weeks with a wrap up for April and May and my new TBR. I am in the middle of reading Japanese Gothic right now, which is going fairly well, but we can get to that in a couple of weeks. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you want to argue with me about Alice in Wonderland, let's go. Let's go. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.